Nisha. Ma, Diana shouted as she toddled toward her favorite red ball. I watched my little girl with amusement, seeing the wonders for her world through a set of 2-year-old eyes. Despite the stress of the last few months, our little girl remained unaffected, and it was soothing to watch her antics as she mastered her running abilities. We were at the Kamala Nehru Park once more. Although it was a little further from our apartment than some of the other parks, this was one of our favorites. Gianna loved the green animals carved from lush bushes and would crane her neck to look up at the giraffe every time we saw it. But she particularly loved the open spaces. Just to move as full toddler speed delighted her, and today she was trying to kick her ball at the same time, shrieking with delight every time she moved it a few inches. Kabir was me on this day, although he had opted to sit in the shade while I chased the baby around. I knew he was still uncomfortable, but he was laughing at Gianna's antics as she would wind up all the ball and promptly throw it on the ground right in front of her. I was so happy to see him outside for the first time in a long while. Perhaps the fresh air would help him heal even more. Gianna darted off the grass onto one of the stone walkways and went to kick her ball again. This time, though she missed the red orb and her tiny foot landed the top of it, knocking her over. The poor sweetheart let out an angry wail and I rushed over to pick her up, snuggling her close with the other arm. I grabbed the ball and we returned to where Kabir was sitting, Gianna crying uncontrollably. Is she okay? Kabir was sitting straight like he was about to launch himself off the bench to join us as I was heading back to him. By this time, Gianna was thrashing in my arms and I had to struggle to hold on to her as I joined Kabir on the freshly painted green bench. I'm sure she's fine, I said soothingly. I swung Gianna's legs over mine and started to inspect for cuts and bruises. Sure enough, there was an angry scrape on her left knee. She must have landed on that knee when she lost her balance. My poor sweetheart. There wasn't much blood, but the skin was torn, and I could only imagine how much that stung. I dug a cloth out of her bag and poured a little water on it, putting it on her knee to soothe the pain. Soon the crying turned to teary sniffles and finally stopped altogether. I lifted the cloth and inspected the boo-boo. It was going to be sore, but it could have been much worse. Interested in the condition of her knee, Gianna looked down with wide eyes. "Oh," she said, and the understatement made both of us laugh. Then she scooted off my knee, held her hands out for the ball, and took off. Curious, we watched her deliberately place the ball on the ground and reel back to kick it again. "You clever, determined girl," Kabir chuckled and I looked over at him. Just as I was going to respond, an idea started to blossom in my mind. Never far from my mind, my thoughts turned back to Vivan and Meera. Just like Gianna, they lost their balance in a way. So did Kabir, I mused. Everybody had their own dreams and each dream was interrupted, just like the baby's play when she tripped over her ball. Gianna didn't give the pain of her scraped knee power over her. She didn't let it get the best of her. Instead, he allowed some tears, but then she moved past the pain. She gained control of it instead of letting it gain control of her. "She's a tough one," Kabir noticed. "Just like her daddy," I responded and he shook his head. "She's strong like her mummy," he responded. "You are my rock, Nisha." I wanted to comment, but my mind was diverted towards Gianna when she took off running once more. What a determined little girl she was. A small snowball of an idea started to form in my head. I started to take a breath to talk it over with Kabir, but as the sketch of this idea started to grow and take shape in my mind, I decided to keep it to myself for a while longer. The sun's rays were waning a little and Kabir joined me after I settled Gianna on a swing and started pushing her. Her screams of delight drawing grins from others around us. By the time we packed up and headed home, Gianna's eyes were starting to droop. It was nap time. I could also tell Kabir was fighting the fatigue he so often felt in the evenings. I was sure he would be exhausted by the time we returned to our apartment on this day, one of the first time he had ventured outside. It was hard to keep my enthusiasm down while my idea kept expanding to different possibilities, but I tempered my energy to match Kabir and Gianna's. Kabir's sense of relief was palpable when we were entered our cozy little apartment once more. I started to fuss with getting the baby ready for her nap and said nonchalantly over my shoulder, "You look tired too, Kabir. Why don't you go and rest for some time? I have a couple of things I want to do to tidy up the living room, and I don't want to keep you up." He groaned appreciatively and trudged into our airy bedroom. 5 minutes later, I crept in with the dozing Gianna resting on my shoulder. He too was out, sleeping the peaceful slumber of a man who had been out in the fresh air for the better part of a day. I settled Gianna in her cot and left the two of their naps. I closed the bedroom door quietly, pushing the door gently so the latch would catch without a sound. Tiptoeing into the living room, I logged onto a laptop, my path clearly laid out by now. First, I double checked my savings account to make sure I had enough to plan my surprise. Then, I looked up a phone number and picked up my phone. "Buddy," I confirmed when the phone connected. "It's Nisha." "Nisha," I heard in response, surprise coloring her happy voice. "It's been too long. How are you, my friend?" I settled back and filled my childhood friend in over the last few months, patiently answering her question as they were posted. "And how's the little one?" "Gianna's wonderful. I honestly can't imagine life without her. What a gift she is." "She sounds terrific and growing well." "Very much so. She's very healthy and such a happy little girl." At first, when Kabir came home from the hospital, she seemed a little scared of all the bandages, but she soon got used to them. You know how quickly kids bounce back? If only we could all bounce back that quickly. I know, I mused, and with that, it was time to tell her about my idea. A plan that hinged on what I knew to be her unerring sense of hospitality. "I love the idea," she purred. "Of course, you are all welcome here. You didn't even need to ask, silly." I grinned. "I know I didn't. I said you have always been a great friend. I look forward to seeing you. Let me know when the plans are confirmed, and I'll see you soon." We hung up, and for the first time in too long, I felt the warm taste of hope on my tongue once more. Hearing Gianna on the baby monitor, she was rolling over. I glanced at the time quickly. Oh dear, I had been talking to Pari a lot longer than I expected. Hopefully Kabir would sleep just a little longer too. A half hour later, I printed the tickets I had purchased and tucked them under the laptop for now. I sent separate texts to Meera and Vivan asking them to come over for dinner. "I have something important to talk to you about," I explained in each message. "Who are you texting?" Kabir said behind me, startling me so badly. I nearly dropped my phone, face flushing wildly. I managed to stammer. I thought I'd invite Meera and Vivan over for dinner." I was awful at hiding surprises, and the half truth of the invitation made me feel desperately guilty. "Is Jana still sleeping?" I asked. Of course she was. She was exhausted, but I wanted to distract him while I gathered my thoughts. "She rolled over once, but she's still out," he said absently, more curious about my reaction. He cocked an eyebrow at me, but didn't comment on my obvious discomfort. "What are we having?" My mind went blank and then launched into a frenzied inventory of supplies in my kitchen. I know it's kind of last minute, so something pretty quick, I'm thinking." Kabir grinned, settling a hip against the counter in the kitchen. You invite them over for dinner, but don't have dinner planned. You're stammering like a 5-year-old getting caught stealing an extra biscuit. And Nisha, you're blushing. What are you up to?" I took a deep breath and then let it out, weighing the prickly discomfort of further denial or launching the plan prematurely. Then I squared my shoulders proudly. "Maybe I have a surprise," I said. "I'll tell you when we were all together, okay?" His chocolate brown eyes searched mine, but I could tell he was also weighing teasing me further or letting me off the hook. He smiled again. I knew he was letting me escape, for now. "Do you want me to order something?" he suggested, glancing at the clock. "No," I decided. "I can pull something together. We have had so many restaurant meals. I'm missing my kitchen. Why don't you go sit down?" He nodded and turned to leave. "Okay, maybe I'll just go online and check." "No," I said quickly, thinking of the tickets stashed in the laptop. Startled, he turned around. I cleared my throat and held up a hand to ward off any more questions. "It's part of the surprise. I just need you not to be on the computer right now." You certainly are being mysterious today, he said. May I go read a book or is that off limits too? I giggled a little. No, that's okay, I said, unsharing him out of the kitchen. When he was gone, I threw myself into making a nice dinner to compliment the surprise I was planning to unveil to my friends. And when they came, it was indeed a nice, almost celebratory meal. We enjoyed each other's company immensely, and for a few wonderful minutes, it was like we had all been relieved of the collective burdens we all felt. The air felt lighter, positively charged. Gianna, well rested, was playing happily after the meal. The atmosphere was perfect, no stress, nothing negative to weigh us down. It was during those peaceful, stress free moments at the dinner table that I knew for sure that my plans were inspired. As if he was reading my mind, Kabir spoke up. So, Nisha, what is this big secret you have been keeping all day? All eyes turned to me, and I knew it was time for the big announcement. This evening we were at the park. I began. Gianna hurt her knee, but after a few tears, she got up again. After that little break, she was fine again. This was where things could fall apart, so I was hoping that I explained myself carefully. I think, I said, taking a breath. No, I know that we all need a similar respite. Every one of us has been treaded on by fate lately, and it's been getting us down, weighing on our souls and stealing our sleep at night. I looked at the other adults at the table. I agree, Mira said, but what are you suggesting? You do seem like you have a plan. I laughed. You have always had the gift of insight, I said teasingly. I stood up and hurried into the living room, where I had the tickets hidden. Coming in, I had held them proudly. We are going to take a small vacation just for a few days. Vivan pursed his lips, considering. I don't know, Nisha, I don't see how we can. Excited, I interrupted him. We can and we will. I've already bought the airline tickets for all of us. What? Mira cried, her eyes round with shock. Nisha, it's a nice idea, but it's too much. We, Vivan and I, we can't accept something like this. Kabir, did you know about this? I wasn't sure how Kabir was reacting to the idea. His face was unreadable. Was he angry at my impulsive nature? But then he spoke, slowly, as he was digesting the words to make sure they were appropriate before they left his mouth. Mira, he said, I'm not going to pretend I'm not as surprised as both of you. This is all Nisha's doing, but it's not too much, my friends. Was it too much that you both helped Nisha all those weeks since my accident? Nisha wants to return her the favor, and I think it's a fantastic, inspired idea. I wish I could agree, Mira said. It's just bad timing. I need to focus on working. Just then, Gianna brought Vivan a toy and he scooped her up in his lap. You are doing too much, Kabir said. Every single one of us would benefit from a change of scenery. I'm just not sure, she said. It feels like I'm running away. It's easy to run away sometimes, but that makes it so much more difficult to return to what you fled. No, I said firmly. It might lend a fresh perspective for you. I think it will help you writing. What if this is a mistake? You can make mistakes, but you must take ownership of them, I said, meaning a lot more than just a trip. But the words needed to be said. Don't blame them on destiny or the past. Mistakes are yours, but none of us is immune to them. Take the power from them and make it your own. She pursed lips and nodded slowly. This might work. Then she nodded more enthusiastically. I think you're right. Vivan shook his head. It's just not the best time for me to leave. Vivan, Mira said, reaching out for his hand. Please? I think this could be very good for all of us, but especially for you and me. It would be so good for us to step away from the things getting us down here. We need to go somewhere and start to laugh again. Please. He kept shaking his head, and I could see the depression weighing him down. Sensing his anxiety, Gianna slid off his lap and came over to me. Holding up her arms to be picked up, I picked her up and hugged her, watching Vivan. Carefully, I knew his feelings well. Back before I met Kabir, they were dark and tormented, every bit burning with a sense of hopelessness. Vivan, I said, using my firmest mother tone, you need this. He turned his eyes to me, surprised. And Mira continued, maybe it will help my writing. He heaved a sigh. I guess you're right, Vivan said and looked at Mira. I know you know I have been very depressed and I almost let it get the best of me just the other day. What? Mira whispered. Kabir and I exchanged a glance as Vivan pulled together his own thoughts. I ended up at Rajgarh Fort, he said, on the path to Chor Darwaza. Oh no, his girlfriend gasped, and my heart ached to watch her fear in knowing that he deliberately chose the same path that nearly destroyed her life. You weren't going to. Vivan shook his head. I was in a bad place, emotionally, he admitted. But then, standing on those steps so close to the clouds, I knew I needed to fight the course fate had decided to set me on. However, I had no idea where to go from there. We don't determine how we die, he said, but we can dictate how we live. So, he said, turning his beaming grin on me, where is his vacation? The tension that unexpectedly flooded the room suddenly pulled back, like a retreating ocean wave. I grinned back, excited again. Goa, I said happily. Oh wow, Mira said, her face flushing with eagerness. I haven't been to Goa in years. She looked over at Vivan. I'm sure we can splurge for a couple days in a hotel. Oh no, I broke in. It won't be necessary. I took Musafir's concept and went with it. Meaning what? Vivan asked, eyebrows lifted. Why stay in a hotel when we could go local? I reached out to a friend of mine who has a villa in Goa. Only a few blocks from the beach. She said she has plenty of room for us to stay. Everybody? Mira gasped. I nodded happily. Everybody, and she's thrilled at the idea of hosting us. Nisha, Vivan said, you are an amazing friend, and friends push you to be truer to yourself than you ever could imagine without them. Some things you have to accomplish by yourself, others you can't do without help. I responded, you have to balance the two. Kabir reached over and hugged me, wincing only a little as his skin pulled tight in the sudden movement. I think it's the perfect idea, he said enthusiastically. We can use this time to draw a line in the sand. So to speak, we will leave the past behind us, but take the time while we are there to plan for the future. I nodded, thrilled that everyone was so supportive of my plan. How amazing that just this morning we were all struggling to put one foot in front of the other, plodding through our concern both for ourselves and each other. Now there was a sense of anticipation, flavoring our lives once again. We would take up arms against fate. We would fight it with everything we had. And when the battle was over, we would be stronger.